Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. Welcome to this month's product update webinar. And in this webinar, we will be discussing the August release, so the previous release of our software. This webinar will also be recorded, so if you cannot attend the full duration, feel free to check the recording afterwards. We will go, like the previous sessions, through the release notes. So we'll go through all the release notes and cover every element of it, which is of importance. And then we'll also show in the software why these matter. At the end, hopefully, we'll have a short live demo of the new Civil 3D integration, which is currently in beta. And then there's also time for questions if there are questions related to the software. So I have shared my screen. I have shared here the release notes for the last release. You can, of course, also find these on our customer help center. They have also been mailed to you, so feel free to take the release notes next to you in this webinar while we go over them. So yeah, let's get into it and discover what new things we have done in last month. So the release highlights for this release are really focused on building LCA. So we have one completely new calculation tool, which is the calculation tool from Miljöbyggnad 4.0, which is a Swedish certification scheme which we support. We have also a new calculation tool for MEP systems. So if you want to do just LCA for mechanical, electrical, or plumbing, there's now a tool for this as well. There are some improvements to the Autodesk Revit plugin. So nowadays we are also supporting Revit 2024, and there are a couple of other kind of useful changes to it. The really big change here, which I'm excited about, is the updates to Carbon Heroes benchmarks, which is our internal benchmark program. Probably some of you have checked it. So you can find a lot of information about that in the software. We also have the new plus A2 data. So EN 15804 plus A2 is now available in the interior design carbon tool. So this was one of the last carbon tools which did not have this data yet. Then for infra, not mentioned here, but we have a beta plugin for Civil 3D. So that is a plugin which will hopefully show in a bit. Then on early design and eco design, there were some updates to the UK region for Carbon Designer 3D. So those are now live. Then there is a short update on product LCA, and this is mostly related to averaging emissions or averaging resources in an EPD. So I'll show that. And then there's a big general improvement, and that is our ISO 27001 certification, or 27001, how you want to call it. So this is of course related to all the things we are doing related to cybersecurity. So we make sure that the platform is safe, and everybody can trust that their data is there. So quite recently, we have also attained the Cyber Essentials Plus certification in the UK. Now we have the ISO 27001 as well. So let's go into the first element here. So when we are talking about building LCA, so I'll also show this tool in a bit when I take the software element. But basically, we now have a new tool which is completely compliant with Miljöbyggnad 4.0. So those of you who have been doing Miljöbyggnad 3 assessments, so basically previous, it is quite different because this allows to record all the lifecycle stages. It also uses the new Boverket data, and it has both plus A1 and plus A2 emissions. Everyone in Sweden who had a license with us already has this on their license, so you can automatically check out this new tool. Then the MEP systems, and I see that there's also a question related to it already. How extensive is it? I'll show it in a bit. How extensive it is, it depends a bit on how familiar you are with including MEP2 assessments. So if you are, for example, doing a RICS or GLA assessment, you could use that tool for MEP as well, because it has the MEP data. But this tool is really focused on only MEP. So if you do a assessment for just mechanical, electrical, or plumbing systems, you can use this tool for that. Of course, with MEP, the people that are familiar with this know this, there is a restriction in how much data there is in our industry. So in the UK, there is a slight change in that with the TM65 data, but still there is less industry data if you compare it to, for example, your typical construction products. So if we're talking about our steel, our concrete, our CLT, these kind of things. So everything which is relevant is there. And of course, we are also working quite a lot on making sure there's new generic data specifically for MAP also. I'll cover the new generic data we have added this release also in a bit. So again, like MB4, I will show this tool after we get through these release notes. Autodesk Revit then. So Autodesk Revit 2024 is now supported, and with the new version of the Revit plugin, which you should download through the Revit store alone. I see that there are some issues, by the way, with people connecting, but my team will look into that. I'm not really sure what I can do about it right now. But basically, when we talk about Autodesk Revit, the new plugin, we support 2024. There's now also the options to map data to QNG or BR18. So for those familiar with it, these are the regulatory databases for the QNG assessment in Germany and the BR18 assessment in Denmark. Besides this, also, if there is EPD data in our database which has EPD names in multiple languages, you can now also see those. Of course, when we talk about EPDs, majority of them are published in whatever language the manufacturer prefers. So we translate all of them to English, but we don't translate every EPD name to every language out there. So it will be, for example, a German manufacturer, it will probably be in German and English. If it's a French manufacturer, French and English, and so on. So a big change also what we have now is that you can save your mappings in the plugin. So we used to have this in a really early version of the Revit plugin. Then it didn't work so nice, so we removed it, and now it's back again. So this is quite useful for if you want to maybe save some of the data and then continue with your assessment later. You can also remove all of your mapping settings at once if it's really needed. Autodesk App Store is the place to go if you want to download this new plugin. So if you're in Revit, just go to this little shopping cart icon in the top right corner, and it will allow you to search through the App Store and find the One Click LCA plugin. You might need installation rights. So if you have some internal IT system set up, you might have to ask your IT department to help with that. Then we have the +A2 data in the interior design carbon tool. So I'll really briefly highlight this in a bit as well. So this was the last carbon tool that didn't have A2 data yet. So now you would have +A2 data there. I'll show you what this exactly means, but basically you now have a larger database to pick data from because there's about 9,000 EPDs for the EN 1504 +A2 out there right now. And of course that number is increasing every day. So yeah, more data is always a good thing in our world of LCA assessments. Then we have our Carbon Heroes benchmarks. So this one is quite good. So we've had our Carbon Heroes benchmark system already forever, but we hadn't updated it last year, and now we have done a really, really large update to it. And in this update, we have added, for example, 50 new benchmark countries. So countries which previously did not have enough data to really make benchmark groups. So that is now shown for UK specifically because we have a lot of data there. We have added new building types. So primary schools, one dwelling households, attached row houses, industrial buildings now all have their own separate building benchmarks. And in the US, we have also added offices and warehouses. One thing that's not shown here is that we now also have a data center benchmark. At the moment, it's only a global benchmark because there is not that much data on data center just yet, but there's already enough that we can make a benchmark group out of it. So that's quite interesting. I see there's two really brief questions on the Swedish products. I'll answer that one in a bit. And the second one, then I'll try if my team can answer that one. Is there office and warehouse benchmark for the UK? Yes, there are, and there were already in the past. So we've always already had enough data for office buildings in the UK and warehouses, but now there's just more data even. So I'll show you also where we can find this in a bit. The next one, then new data. So of course, we're always updating our database. It's something that we have an entire team dedicated to working on. So last month, we included 244 new generic data points. A lot of different variations of glass wool, metal pipes, plastic pipes, but also ducts and fittings and galvanized steel ducts and fittings and PVC ducts and fittings. I'll show you the names where you can find them also, but if you happen to have the release notes open, you can also follow this link to our help center. It shows there as well. So in the last month, we also added about 900 new EPDs. We also updated quite a few, but I'm not 100% how many, not 100% sure how many that was in this case. So going to the next update, eco design. So on customer request, we have made a few tweaks to our carbon designer region for the UK. As of today, you can only get this in the Plus A1 tool, but we are working on also making this available in the Plus A2 tool. So the key differences here came all from customer requests. So we can now set curtain walls and raised access floors as default constructions in office buildings. We have now the option to create and add new type of constructions related to different type of finishes, waterproofing systems, and sealing systems. And then also internal wall finishes are possible as a new building part. So there are different type of finish assemblies which you can add there. Furthermore, we made a couple of edits to what is kind of a default and what not. So this is already now available in Carbon Designer 3D. So if you're using this tool specifically in the UK, you can go check these out. They were of course already added about 1.5 weeks ago when this release happened. Then there's a small change for product LCA, which I'll also show in a bit, which is related to how we average emissions. So this is related to if you are a manufacturer and your product is actually an average product of, let's say, multiple production locations or multiple factories or these kind of things. So it just makes it a bit easier to complete your assessment with that. So I'll show you where you can find this in the software. And if you set this, it automatically is also displayed in the EPD document which is generated. Then there's this one general update. So the ISO 27001 certification. So we have achieved this about a month ago. So of course this is great because it shows our commitment to security and basically make sure you don't have to worry about where your data is and how we handle your data. So now I'll go through all of these elements we had here, but through the software. So we'll grab this one. I'll just move this one here to the left. And at the end of this short demo, I'll see if we can get you this Civil 3D demo. So when we talk about MB4, so if you have a Swedish calculation or Swedish license, my bad, sorry. You already have this tool. So if you have a project, you will be able to find it there. If you don't have it open in your project yet, you can always go to Tools, click Available Calculation Tools and find it from there. So if we are opening it, we first of all see that the emissions generated here are per kilogram CO2 equivalent per square meter. So instead of the totals, which maybe previously were reported, it now reports a slightly different value. That also means that in comparison with our benchmarks, it might look slightly different. So going into the building materials query of this calculation tool, it looks exactly like the MB3 tool. So there is very few changes there. The changes which there are related to once you have added data to the project. So first of all, we can see that for the transportation options in MB3, I'll just abbreviate Miljöbyggnad to MB, it's easier. So in MB3, we had the default transportation settings, and now in MB4, we have the transportation options from Boverket as required by the scheme. Furthermore, we have the option to report wastage, and now we can report it either as a wastage percentage, or we can actually report it under the construction site operations, which is an input which was already in a lot of tools, but not yet in Miljöbyggnad because it was not part of the scope previously. Furthermore, we have added the option to report B3 as a percentage, but also B2 as an actual input. So there is now the maintenance annual input form where we can go and add that type of data. Also, a big change here is that the Boverke data, which we are using for our assessment, if you want to use this, of course, you can also use whatever. It doesn't have the conservative 25% top up. So what is required in Klimaatdekking is not required here. So then the biggest change, which is probably the reason why a lot of people would do these kind of assessments in tandem to Klimaatdekking, is that it has full life cycle stages. So we're no longer limited to A1 to A5, but we actually also report use phase, maintenance, repair, replacements, of course, and then also energy and water and so on. So it now has become quite a full life cycle tool, obviously still reporting just global warming potential. But in this tool, we can use both EN 15804 plus A1 and plus A2 data. So pretty much all the data you need is there. So plus A1, plus A2, and Boverket. So that is a quite nice new calculation tool. Then we have the MEP tool. So there for sure would be some questions related to this, I assume. So it's a tool which is a more simplified calculation tool if we compare it to, let's say, the RICS or GLA tool. So it really allows just reporting on building technology. So all the data you need for an MEP assessment, so MEP stands for mechanical, electrical, plumbing, we can find all of that here. So if we are searching through data, you also see that the scope of data which we have included is a bit more limited. So we only have included the relevant data for such assessments. So everything we need is there. The one kind of limitation we of course have there is just our industry limitation, because there is no MEP equivalent for every single product out there as of today. Or when I talk about MEP equivalent, I mean, of course, EPD. So when we're talking about systems and installations, we have a lot of different type of options which you can find. But if we, for example, take a look at HVAC components, you will definitely not find every single product out there. This is, of course, an industry change which has to happen. We are trying to, fuel this change by also having a lot of generic options. So if we would actually filter to One Click LCA and we're searching through MEP, there will be plenty of options which are available. There's generics and there is EPDs. So if we're searching for One Click LCA, we'll find the generic resources. But if we're searching for, let's say, any type of manufacturer data, you'll have plenty of manufacturer options too. It's just, we have it quite good when we want to select steel or concrete because every single option is there, but that this doesn't exist yet in the world of MEP. So hopefully in the near future, manufacturers will actually create more EPDs for MEP, and then we'll be able to find proper assessments, or we're able to do proper assessments for MEP as well. But yeah, this tool is not available with every license yet. The data which is here is also available in the RICS and GLA tool. But if you're specifically doing MEP, so maybe interesting if you have a team that only deals with MEP and doesn't deal with whole life carbon assessment, then this tool can be quite interesting, I would say. It also, of course, allows us to report energy consumption, water consumption. We can have emissions and removals, all these kind of things. There's a really quick question there. Is there anything in the MEP tool that you cannot do is not already included in the RICS whole life carbon tool? Everything in the RICS tool you can do also what we can do here. So if you're doing whole life carbon, I would probably use the whole life carbon tool. If you're just doing MEP, I would recommend to use this tool. When we talk about the results, we are of course reporting global warming potential, but then we are also reporting the life cycle stages like we have here. So if you're familiar with the RICS or GLA tool, you're very familiar with this one already. Yeah, just easier option to do MEP assessments. Then we talk about interior design carbon. So this was the tool which, or the last carbon tool, which we still were giving plus A2 data. So if you're looking for that kind of data in the tool, you'll be able to find it. So the MEP or also MEP data, but any type of EPD which has plus A2 data, you'll now be able to find in this tool. Of course, I like the MEP tool, the scope, the scope of data in this tool is a bit more limited. So you don't have all the information perhaps here. So if you were doing assessments with this tool before, then your results will be saved in the little query down here, because before it had only plus A1 data, but now it can use both. So you'll have two results reports if you did an assessment before and if you want to update it. Can you import information from the MEP tool directly into the main tool? You could. Either you could add it to an existing tool or an existing project, and you could, for example, copy data from it and just in there. But what you could also do is just export the data. So when we're in our query, we have the option to download the Excel, which basically downloads a BOM, BOQ, and you can import that directly into your projects, also in all RIX or GLA tools. So when we're talking then about Carbon Heroes benchmarks, we're of course talking about this one. So previously there were, the last update we did was late 2021. We skipped last year for logistical reasons, but we have now properly updated it. So the default benchmark which it shows will still be related to the project you create. So in this case, we have a project. I set it for office building in Finland. So the main benchmark it tells me is offices in Finland. And there's a bunch of projects there which we can then can look at. Oh, I was not supposed to go and edit my project. So that is the default. But if you now scroll, so if you open it, you can select any other type of benchmark. We do realize that the format is not ideal at the moment, so we will be working on making this more accessible. But basically, because we have so much benchmarks, it will become a quite long list. So if we would say, hey, I want to compare my my benchmark to actually global data centers, I could actually scroll through it and find the global data centers there. The really big addition here, of course, is more countries, more building types, but also we have now made two separate benchmark groups. So MEP assessments are becoming more and more relevant nowadays, but definitely not every assessment that is done in the software includes MEP, which means that we thought it was not valid to just say, okay, we have a global benchmark and it either does not include MEP or it does include MEP. So we now have two benchmark sets. So we have a benchmark set, which, for example, when we talk about Germany, it has all the project data. And then we have the one which does not have MEP. So if you want to compare your project and you have two benchmark sets, one with MEP and one without MEP, just make sure which ones you're actually comparing to. So all of them, if you, for example, set this data center benchmark, you click on this question mark, it will tell you what the retained sample size is. So it will tell you for pretty much all of them. So you can always switch between them. If you want to compare your results to, some other country or whatnot, this is always possible. So yeah, there is a lot of data there now. I would say there's over 2,000 validated projects, so it's a quite valuable benchmark set. And we will probably later this year also publish new research related to actually the scales and how relevant they are compared to, for example, regulatory benchmarks. So yeah, that is always available in your projects. Then when we talk about generic data, so this month we added quite a few new one. So we have some new rock wool installations, and they have different type of recycled rates. So if you search for generics for rock wool, you can now find all of those. Of course, rock wool is a quite well represented product anyway. There's plenty of EPDs for it, but if you don't want to select an EPD, you can now select generic options. There are two new type of ceiling tiles. Then there are a variety of new type of cables. So definitely useful for those MEP assessments if you don't want to pick a manufacturer specific cable, but we could already pick some of these. There's a variation of new glass wool generics. So I like rock wool. There were plenty of EPDs already for it, but now you could pick these as well. And then there are a really wide range of different type of pipes and plastic, metal pipes and plastic pipes. So also useful if you want to do MEP assessments. Just repeating myself, but obviously the galvanized steel ducts and fittings and PVC ducts and fittings are also useful for MEP assessments. But basically, there's a lot of new generic data. This month, it was quite heavily related to MEP. But of course, like any month, there's generally a lot of different type of generics which we are adding. So if there are some generics that you would like to see that we don't have yet, reach out to us and we can check what we can do. So we can discuss with our data team who makes these kind of generics, what would be good options for you to create. I like what Asha just posted there. We also have a new article on the role of installation. So if you want to find out more about installation, so maybe more about than picking the resource, but actually understanding it, then you could check that article that she just linked there. So yeah, then there were these changes to the carbon designer, which you could find if you, of course, go into carbon designer there. Then I would say the next update is related to the product LCA. So the averaging feature, which I was talking about, so this is mainly relevant if you're looking at product LCA. We can go into input data, and then under the EPD description, we have the averaging option. So this is new. So previously we had to do this manually. So basically, if you do this kind of averaging, you just type what kind of averaging we are looking for, and then what is the averaging method. So this will automatically also be displayed in your EPD document. So yeah, that is quite nice and useful for manufacturers. So then I hope that our product management team is online and we could demonstrate the Civil 3D demo. Leonid, are you online to show this?
Can you hear me? Hi.
I can hear you fine.
Yeah, nice. So let me share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
So this is our new plugin for Civil 3D. This is one way integration with our platform. So we give you possibility to export data from Civil 3D to our cloud platform to calculate it. So basically what data you can export from Civil 3D. Currently, there are two different available types. This is corridor materials, and basically representation of different highways, roads, tunnels, and pipe networks. So this is our main view. When you launch the plugin, you can see it. So here you can select different corridor materials. Basically, you select alignments related.
Leonid, I think people cannot maybe see your screen. Could you try to reshare it and select
Yes,
like
sure.
your entire screen? Sorry, guys, we're working on this small technical difficulty.
I shared it one more time. Tell me
Can
if it's
somebody in the chat confirm they can see it now? Yes, it works. Great.
perfect.
Okay,
Yeah,
then please
so this is how it looks like. Here you can select corridor materials. Basically, you select corridors where you can select related sample line groups and material list to this one. How you collect materials for corridors and alignments. We use integrated method how Civil 3D calculated. We use compute materials and volume report that's available in Civil 3D. So yeah, here you can press material button. You can open the window where you can see what materials will be export. Here you have detailed information about available volume that will be export, quantity type that used for calculation, different shape, that's representation of assemblies, subparts, and yeah, so you can change it. It will be changed here. For pipenet materials, we collect materials by using pipenet structures information. So basically, we export for pipes its length, for structure, seat height, and outer diameter and inner diameter. So yeah, you select everything you want to export, you press LCA in cloud, it will open you a new window in our platform, and basically after this standard logic of importing data. And if we open XML file, basically we export, we can see assigned classification for different type of alignment. We select different classification. For example, for some assemblies, we select construction type. For class like ground removed and ground fill, when we work with surfaces, we select some kind of earthwork, and for infrastructure system, they basically represent everything that inside pipe networks. And I guess it's basically it. Currently plugging in beta testing and available for Civil 3D version starting with 2022.
Hey, thank you so much for this this demonstration, Leonid. So if you are using Civil 3D for your assessment, so you want to get this data into One Click LCA, at the moment you can just reach out to support and we can tell you how to access the plugin. So as Leonid mentioned, it's currently a beta version, so it's the first iteration of this plugin, but we are committed to make it also a really nice working plugin, just like the previous systems we had. Then I just have one really quick question. So if you're in One Click LCA and you see this this banner, there's this option to take this this feedback survey for the carbon experts. So every now and then we publish this feedback survey where we ask construction experts like yourselves to raise your voice and tell kind of what is important in our industry. So I'll put the link also in the chat. So if you have not done that yet, we would very much like that. There's a question here: is there a plugin for Revit? Absolutely. So if you're in Autodesk Revit, just click on this little shopping cart icon in the top right corner, and you can download the plugin right there. So yeah, that was kind of it for our presentation. So if there are any questions, Leonid is here to answer any questions related to Civil 3D. I can answer questions related to anything else. So if there are some questions, please let us know. If there are no questions, it's of course fine as well. Plugin for MEP, does it work for building? If you mean in this case MEP data in Revit, you can export that just like normal construction data. You just have to be a bit careful in how it's mapped and what functional unit it uses. Because if we, for example, have EPDs for MEP data, they're generally reported in really strict functional units. So, a piece of heavy equipment might be reported in units, while, for example, plumbing or ducting is reported in linear meters per ducting or cables, for example. So it does work, but MEP works slightly different if we're working with MEP BIM models at least. There's a question here: is the MEP tool a digital fee? It is indeed. So if you are interested in the MEP tool, I would say contact your local business developer and they could show you a demo, or you could try the tool for free for 2 weeks, I guess is our normal trial period. So you can see if it adds value to your subscription. If there is no further questions right now, then I would like to thank you all for attending this this product update webinar. We'll have one again next month about the release, which we'll have this month. As we said in the beginning, it is also recorded, so you will get the recording. And if you have some questions on the release after that, you can always reach out to us. So just mail support@oneclicklca.com or use the little webinar setting in the top. the little plugin in the bottom right. There are, of course, also different type of webinars which we have ongoing. This one is not the only one. So there's also the EPD webinar, which is upcoming. So if you're interested in that, so if you're a manufacturer or a EPD consultant or so on, check out the EPD webinar too. There's a question, will the recording be emailed to us? Asha, do you know if it will be emailed automatically? I think it probably will, but that is a question for our dear marketing colleagues. It will indeed be mailed to you automatically. Alrighty, thank you all so much for joining. Hope you all have a great day and that this update will make your work a bit easier. And see you all next time in the future, in the next update webinar. Cheers. Bye-bye.